Hello and welcome to Star USA Training. Today is Tuesday, March 10th, 2026, and this is our final in a three-part series on export compliance essentials. Whether you're joining us live or watching the recording back, we appreciate you being here. If you're attending live, we encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from today. I see many of you are already doing that, so thank you. We also invite you to connect with Star USA on LinkedIn. We've seen a lot of benefit from connecting with individuals, and we want to continue that conversation by sharing valuable content, industry insights, updates, articles. It's been a very busy, at least 12 months, if not 12 years. Having more information and access to information is beneficial to all, I believe. So yeah, if you feel comfortable, go ahead and drop your LinkedIn in the chat there if you like, or just connect with us afterwards on the web. This session is being recorded. After the webinar, we will upload the recording, the slides, and any additional materials to our website. If you registered for the webinar, you will receive a link to the recording and the materials in a day or two after we've got all the stuff uploaded to our website. For those of you seeking continuing education credits, we will provide a CE code at the end of the webinar. This session qualifies for 1 CE credit for licensed customs brokers and those with CES or CCS credentials through NCBFAA. Please be sure to save the code given at the end of the session if you're watching it live. If you are watching this back again later on YouTube, it will be a different code. So when you go to log it in the NCBFAA system, you'll have a live versus a recorded version. And if you're watching it back on YouTube, it will be different letters and numbers. We encourage you to stay engaged throughout today's session. If you have questions for myself or for either of our guests, we have 2 guests with us today, please pop those into the Q&A section of the webinar software. So if you have questions about that you'd like us to answer at the end of the session, go ahead and put those in the Q&A section. And then lastly, a quick disclaimer. While I'm a licensed customs broker, today's discussion is informational only and should only be used for informational purposes. Nothing should be considered legal advice today, nor the transaction of customs business on your behalf. If you or your company need additional assistance after the webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or to one of our 2 guests who would be happy to hear from you. And before we get to introductions, I have a few things to cover. First up is a quick introduction on who I am and what Star USA is all about. My name is Michael D. Easton. I am the President and General Manager of Star USA. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and I am a huge trade compliance nerd. Star USA provides international trade and compliance support in all manners of international trade and business, consulting, advice, training, and services. I am a member of the Northern Ohio District Export Council since the early 2020s. That's a blur from those years. I'm not sure exactly when I started. So if you need access to export resources, I am, along with Todd and Nate on the call here, one of your avenues to finding those export resources. If you'd like to learn more about us, please feel free to visit us on the web, and we'd be happy to start up a conversation, or you can email us at hello@starusa.org. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the 3rd in our 3-part series on export. I know imports are receiving a lot of focus right now following the rulings that have come out about the tariffs, but there will be room for those conversations in the near future, especially as events unfold. And I'll talk at the end about an upcoming seminar in Northeast Ohio, as well as our April webinar. But last time, or the first time that we talked back in January, we discussed some of the agencies that are part and parcel to the export regulations and the export rules. The foreign trade regulations, the export administration regulations, the ITAR and OFAC regulations. We covered some of the key terms, some of the information sources and access to different places to go to find out more about those different programs, what they mean for your business, what they mean to exporting in general. So if you missed part 1, definitely go back on our website. You can click the link here when you get these slides, or you can go to the on-demand section of our webinars and pull up those materials there. And then last month, we talked about building an export compliance strategy for your business, setting out your game plan, what you need to pay attention to, different things that you should have implemented within your organization. As well as some of the ways to bridge the gaps that we see very commonly in a lot of organizations, and how to communicate, because that is one of the most essential aspects of building an export compliance strategy that works, is the ability to communicate within your department, with the other departments in your organization, and with your external partners, whether they're customs brokers or freight forwarders, suppliers or customers. That is a major aspect of having a successful program. So definitely go back to those previous parts if you missed them, and you can do some digging there. And before we jump into the guest portion, I wanted to do a quick poll of our audience here. So it should be up on your screen now. We are interested in having a little bit more understanding of which export assistance resources or partner programs that you are currently familiar with or use in your organization. Do you partner with the U.S. Commercial Services? Do you work with the Small Business Development Center or the Export Assistance Network in your area? How about the Ex-Im Bank or the U.S. SBA export programs? Are you familiar with the STEP program, or one that I'm a huge fan of, the Ohio Export Internship Program, which is a phenomenal opportunity to get matched with students who have studied export and trade as part of their coursework and are actually coming out of school with direct knowledge about what it takes to succeed in export business, which is a phenomenal place to be building your program from, having access to these resources through this Ohio Export Internship Program. Do you work with your Chamber of Commerce or other industry associations, or are you lone wolfing it? Are you out there trying to figure this out as you go and relying strictly on these kinds of webinars and conversations to bridge the gaps and hopefully succeed? We'll give it another 15 seconds on the results here, and then I will share those results. Okay. Okay. So from our live audience today, we are seeing about 54% are lone wolfing it. Yes, hello, and we see you. And that is partly why we're doing this session today, is to help you become familiar with some of those resources that are available to you. There is a split between U.S. commercial services and industry associations. A lot of you have familiarity with those organizations. And then only a small percentage are working with the SBA and some of the state level resources. So this is a good insight into kind of how our audience navigates through these export programs and access to information and resources. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our two guest speakers today. With me today are Nate Ward and Todd Hiser. Nate Ward is the Director and Trade Advisor for the Ohio SBDC Export Assistance Network, as well as the Director of the Global Business Center for the Monte Ahuja College of Business at Cleveland State University. Nate's got more than 14 years of experience in international trade and business. And he and I have had the opportunity to collaborate on several projects over the years, and he's a wonderful resource for you. And we've also got Todd Hiser here, Director of U.S. Commercial Services Ohio, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce and the International Trade Administration. Todd's got, let's say 18 years working in the public sector and more time in the private sector in international. So he has a wealth of knowledge and experience, and representing the federal U.S. Commercial Services end is another fantastic resource to tap into. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Nate. If you'd like to go ahead and share your screen.
Yeah, thanks very much, Michael. Thanks for this invitation to be here. Everyone at Star USA, Melissa, it's been wonderful to work with you and to collaborate. Really pleased to be part of this the first time I've been on one of their webinars, but as Michael said, we've collaborated on many things over the years. So for my presentation, I've got some good news and bad news for everyone here. So the good news is that I'm here to shed light on some of the resources that may be available to you from your state if you're in the U.S. Most of us are in the U.S. here. The bad news is that mine is very specific. So if you're from Ohio, everything I'm going to talk about is something that is completely 100% eligible for you. If you're not from Ohio, then we're going to have to do a little bit of homework. The upshot to this is And I'll touch on this a little bit more in my presentation, but I'm also affiliated with kind of our international trade body, something called NASBITE. It's the National Association of Small Business International Trade Educators, which is a mouthful. And essentially, this is our national association where we have connections to federal and state, although it leans a little bit more heavily on the state, trade advisors, people that provide trade resources, whether it's a state trade office, it's affiliated with the Small Business Development Center International Trade Network of a state, or it could be World Trade Centers. So I guess that's my preamble to everything I'm going to share with you. Is a lot of this is going to be Buckeye specific, Ohio specific, but if many of these programs I know exist in multiple other states, but I can't make a 100% promise that you'll have an equivalent if you're joining us from, let's say, Alaska or something. Okay, so with that, I'm going to share with you exactly what we do in Ohio and give you some sense of just what is out there, the type of things that are available to you if you're in Ohio, or something similar that you may be able to tap into in your state. So as Michael mentioned, so I work for the Ohio Small Business Development Centers. We are funded by the U.S. Small Business Administration and locally here by the Ohio Department of Development. And basically, international trade is the kind of thing that every government really wants to support. They really want to support the function of exports. We like it when our goods and our services go to foreign buyers who then bring in, we bring their money into our economy, and that's always a good thing for our economies. But we also realize that it has pitfalls, and it's not exactly the kind of thing that everyone is equipped to handle right out the gate. So there tends to be a lot of resources, and it's the kind of thing that can pay big dividends. In Ohio, we're a top 10 exporting state, and the vast majority of the businesses that export are small to mid-sized companies. So roughly about 90% of all the exporting, and this mirrors national figures too. It's a very widespread phenomenon that the average person just kind of thinks this international trade business is really just something that the Apples, the Costcos, the big companies of the world do, but statistically, it's mostly small to mid-sized companies who may or may not have the capacity to handle everything that's thrown at them. And there's multiple layers of support that are offered in Ohio, and this again is not unusual for many states, where there's a multi-tier approach for services that a company can tap into. The first one is me as a trade advisor. So I've been a trade advisor for 14 years. I spent 10 years in private sector doing international trade prior to this. And most of us in the network are something similar, that we've worked in international trade, we've worked in companies, and we are a taxpayer provided service that we go out and we act as a business consultant, and we share our opinion, our knowledge, our networks to help companies figure things out. They don't have to lone wolf it. In addition to that, the companies, they come to us because they know shipping is different, selling is different, logistics, everything with the tariffs that's happened, and companies had questions about all those things. But in the end of the day, it can be very rewarding, and we want companies to take advantage of the clients that are available in foreign markets. And we do this through our own consultation, through readiness assessments, country research, market identification, documentation, all the things that are listed here, which actually I've summarized in a previous webinar. I could share with you that link, which goes into a little bit more detail on a lot of these things. But that's not all. We, as our state, and many states have something like this, we have overseas contractors that will do due diligence, they'll do customer searches. In our case, we cover roughly 125 countries, and this is something that's entirely taxpayer funded. There's no cost for companies registered in Ohio to take advantage of this. Similarly, we participate in something called the State Trade Expansion Program, which is an SBA funded grant. Locally, we call it the Image Grant. And there's different iterations of this in many different states. But if you're in a state where it does a lot of international trade, they've participated in this, you may be able to benefit from either some subsidy or from a small, getting some money back from the federal government through your state government to subsidize your international trade expansion programs and projects. And we do participate in trade shows, albeit not to the clip that some of our neighbors do. Unfortunately, we're trying to change that. But there may be opportunities for you to participate in an overseas trade show and have your state. And this is something typically funded through the STEP grant. But there are states that have their own budget line items to supplement this, to put companies front and forward typically through participation in the national effort, the USA Pavilion, which is organized at the Commerce level, U.S. Department of Commerce level, but the states are invited to take part in that. As Michael had mentioned before, in Ohio, we also run a very successful program called the Ohio Export Internship Program. It's one where we develop students and we place them in companies, and we add a sweetener that if a company, to make it really financially light on them, so it's not much of a burden, the state will supplement that student's work at 50%. I will also say that if there's an Ohio company on the call right now that has an interest in this, I may be able to even sweeten it further through a specific scholarship through my center. There's some strings attached to that, but if there's companies that are interested in this, it's not too late to sign up. We've had students that have gone on to fill roles as trade compliance analysts. Actually, the trade compliance one has been a really sought after component of this because this is an element that we teach the students about. And unfortunately, trade compliance isn't something that's really taught at colleges and universities across the U.S. overall. So this has really been an opportunity, work pipeline development opportunity that a lot of companies have taken advantage of, and we have placed. Every year we get requests for students to jump in and play a role in a trade compliance of some type. We run a couple of accelerators. In most states, the biggest one known nationally is something called Export Tech. In Ohio, we run two. One is called Global Target, which is run out of Cleveland, and there's another one called Export Success, which is out of Toledo. And essentially what this is, you could sign up for programs to not only look at your compliance, but maybe your overall international plan, like how does international fit in for your company? And a lot of the resources that are discussed here, whether it's Todd's office or someone from the U.S. Department of Commerce, and Export Techs work the exact same way. It's really rounding up all of the trade resources that are available in your network, and they basically hold your hand and feed them. They drip feed them to you as you progress through a way of building out what does your international business program look like? How can you most take advantage of the business development opportunities in other markets, doing it the right way, not doing it in the dark. And we've had multiple success stories of companies just transforming their business because they've been able to kind of figure out what does international mean for them instead of just kind of doing it like in the dark by themselves. Just a couple of plugs, our own event calendar. So we did do one. There are, I'm not going to touch on like government contracting, but we recently did a webinar on how to do government contracting with another partner agency. And also we did our own cybersecurity and ITAR compliance. So if anyone's interested to check that out, they're welcome to do that. We're running a workshop on May 13th, which is a day-long thing where we're going to be covering everything on the transactions of global trade. That's going to be an in-person thing. So if you're in Ohio, you may be interested in that. And then we do a 3-day workshop on all the essentials of how international trade works. That is, again, an in-person thing that we do for International Trade Awareness Month in May. The other thing I wanted to come back to, and after this, I'll get into like the specifics of our export compliance work. But so I mentioned that I'm part of this national network called NASBITE, where we are the trade educators across multiple states. And so we've got members from Illinois, Texas, Florida, New York, all points around the U.S. And we have our national conferences coming up, and it's at the end of this month. And I have a special offer for people on this call that I actually have some limited funds for scholarships. If there's someone in your team that's looking for the end-all be-all professional development opportunity to kind of dive into, we've got tracks on all the points of international trade development. There's compliance in there, but there's logistics. So you could basically come away with this having learned a little bit, and also building out a unique national network of people, nationally, internationally too, that come to this conference. But for a limited time, I have a couple of seats where my center can sponsor a handful of companies to attend this conference. We'll cover registration, airfare, and hotel. The catch is you've got to be a client of our center. So that means that you have to be an Ohio company for starters. But if that's the case for some of you on this call, please, click on this link or scan this code, drop me a message afterwards, and I'm happy to share with you a little bit more of how that will work. We do a lot of research here. The biggest thing that my center does is we provide information. in addition to all these networking type of things. But the biggest service that we're asked to do is helping companies figure out which countries to tackle in which order and provide a logic to their international sales cycle. But you can see here, this is the listing of the different specialty research projects we'll do. And the last one, the second to last one, I should say, export compliance gap analysis, is the one that I want to dedicate the rest of my time really talking about, both to give you a sense of this is something that is possible for you to do. It's possible for you to contact someone, perhaps in a local office, an SBA affiliated office, or international trade office. And if you have questions about this, I can help talk through how this works. So this is what we do locally for export compliance assistance. This is an image. It's been really fun playing around with AI. I'm sure everyone on this call is probably taking their hand at doing something, goofing off with AI. We actually we have a lot of projects related to AI. But okay, so I put in this prompt: create an image that shows people at a company that are trying to identify a security breach when it comes to export compliance. And again, this was the best image that I could come up with. People that have a flashlight and a magnifying glass. I'm sure this is not you at your company, but very often when we talk to companies and this whole idea of export compliance comes up, it's typically met with, I think, a lot of what's the right way of describing this? Either companies understand the severity of it or they don't. It's been brought up many times because a supplier has asked them whether or not they have this export compliance certification or registration. These terms ITAR and EAR are thrown out there. And so that's a typical case. And then maybe it hits with the people who work there that they take it as, oh, I guess we need to understand this. Or the other case is that someone new to the company comes in who had that experience working in somewhere else, and they did have an export compliance program in place. And they're the ones that are sounding the alarm of, hey, listen, what we're doing here is we need to have more structure around this because there's a possible compliance exposure. And so they become like the champion to kind of figure this out. Many times we get called in to be this third party that can say, we don't have a dog in this fight necessarily, meaning like we're not trying to sell them a service. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we can kind of give this objective take on, okay, what is going on here to help sort of level set a lot of the questions of where is there an area of concern, what needs to be addressed, what is the level of risk associated with that. And that's essentially what a gap analysis is in this sense. It's to help the company get their hands around what is going on here and how should we begin to address that. So oftentimes we'll do this for companies that are seeking, let's say, an ITAR registration, because having export compliance program in place is tantamount to your commitment to being registered. You have a product or technology that deals with U.S. military contracts, or any type of military contract for that matter, or aerospace technologies, and really a company that has robust international trade. Whether you're doing it directly or indirectly, these are the types of things that we would advise you to periodically have a review done of just where do things stand. And this is the kind of thing that we help out with. So how does it work? There was a model that was created. I think the first iteration was in the 2007 timeframe, that the U.S. Bureau of Industry and Security actually created a tool that allowed companies, individual companies, to do this assessment. It was a self-assessment tool that our center, and this has become part of, I don't want to say a standard across the U.S., but I know that many of my colleagues in other states do this as well. But they take a version of this program to walk a company through, well, what are the investigative areas that need to be covered, that should be examined? And the way we do it is we'll do a 1 to 2 day investigation of the company's activities. And what that looks like is we'll create a roster of the various people who have a potential exposure to international trade compliance issue, let's say, and we'll interview them. We will do an assessment of what is their awareness of what international trade compliance means, export compliance, what does that mean? How do they handle it? What is their interaction with foreign parties look like? And we begin to develop something of a narrative of what's going on at the company. We process that examination through 19 domains of risk that are laid out in that self-evaluation tool. And then ultimately, we'll come away with recommendations for if there's immediate remediation that needs to happen, and steps that are advised for their long-term security. Locally, we charge a very modest fee to do this, just at a recovery rate cost. We're not in this to make money, but it does require us to put some resources into it. So the typical components of our gap analysis, we will come back with the company's overall risk. There's a rating that we have. There's a tool. What of your products or technology are subject to control, if any. We will give our assessment of the general awareness and obligations across companies' functions on how it pertains to export compliance. We will do an order mapping, order fulfillment mapping, and oftentimes what we see is that trade compliance is typically housed within one person, and very often that person's a safety valve, that they're the ones maybe at the end of the line. It's not unusual for a shipping manager or something who at the very end of the process will say, oh crap, there's a reason for us to stop this shipment. And oftentimes we would make recommendation that question probably could have been asked a lot sooner in that order fulfillment process to avoid that, like that sudden jarring thing at the end to not ship something out. We will provide a detailed exposure risk assessment. So where are those exposures happening, our findings, and last recommendations. And then we will offer to do export awareness training if that doesn't already exist, because that is also one of the components of an export compliance program, is that staff need to have minimal understanding of what does trade compliance mean, what does it mean for them, what are the possible consequences, et cetera. And these are just a couple of examples. I apologize, it's a little bit grainy, but what it looks like when we will provide a written report for companies on what our findings were. We also have an executive summary that we share with the leadership of the company, because we know that the leadership needs to they're the first ones that need to have buy-in. They need to understand, and they also need to understand and accept that there is possible liability that the company could face if that issue is really it's a prominent transgression of the law. But just to give you an idea of what that kind of looks like, and what our mapping looks like for the order fulfillment. So that's really it. Here's my information. Again, if you're in Ohio anywhere, I'd love to make contact with you. Even if you're not in Ohio, but you have questions about what are the state-based resources for international trade and locally to you, I may be able to make an introduction if you don't know those individuals already. So hopefully I did okay on time there, Michael.
That's great.
I will wrap it up.
No, that's perfect. I wanted to give you kudos for that AI image there. I think we need to bring back magnifying glasses and flashlights in the investigative process. So while you're talking there, I kind of wrote down what I heard as one of the key takeaways. I heard you saying basically that the state really wants your business to succeed. With the prevalence of small to medium-sized businesses being such a major component of that international business aspect, the state is putting funding and resources behind helping businesses succeed. So I thought that was a very important message. Things like the OEIP and the global target programs and the workshops, those are all fantastic resources. So I did want to ask, you work with a lot of different businesses. What are some of the typical scenarios you tend to encounter the most when people turn to you for help? Is it the export gap analysis, or are there other things that?
Oh no, that's not typical. I mean that comes up, but the most common things, companies will come to us first because they have an out of the blue, sales opportunity to a country that they've never heard of, and if they've heard about us, they might be a referral from a freight forwarder, for example. Mm-hmm. It might be the question of, am I allowed to ship to them? Like, is there something else I need to know about? And so that's a very common introductory question that we'll get.
An opportunity based. Okay, very interesting. Well, excellent. In the interest of time, I'm going to actually turn it over to Todd Hiser here. Todd, please reintroduce yourself and go ahead and share your stuff or have your conversation.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Nate. That was a great presentation. As Michael mentioned, my name is Todd Hiser. I'm with the U.S. Department of Commerce in the International Trade Administration and the U.S. Commercial Service. We have a great partnership working hand in glove with the Ohio SBDC and Nate's shop, as well as Michael's shop. One of the things I wanted to start just based on some of Nate's comments is it's great to use Nate and Michael for the export compliance part of it. As a federal agency, I'm not the right agency to be able to give you a ruling on EAR or ITAR or OFAC or anything like that. We can give you lots of resources and things. But even though I don't feel like a government official, I am a government official, so I can't give you an official ruling that's outside the scope of our department. We're an export promotion agency. The Commerce Department does have enforcement people with badges and guns and all that stuff, and I'm obligated to share that information if I find out about compliance issues. So please start with Nate and Michael first when you're talking about compliance issues and then things like that. They can give you a lot of great advice and a lot of information on a different level, let's say, than what I can do. I'm going to share my screen here. And can someone give me a thumbs up that y'all can see it? Good. Thank you, Michael. So again, we're part of the U.S. Commercial Service. I've been with Commerce for about 18 years. I did work for a small manufacturing company for 18 years before that, give or take. So I have kind of sat on both sides of the table, both as a trade advisor as part of the Commerce Department, but also I was a lone wolf for 18 years. I didn't know about the Commercial Service. I didn't know about the SBDCs. I didn't know about SBA or Star USA or any of those others. So I did compliance the best I could by trying to find things and looking things up. But before I get into what the Commercial Service can do to help you out, both in compliance and export promotion side, some of these are going to be a little duplicative of what Nate talked about, but I really wanted to leave them in just to emphasize, why they're important. Exports matter. It's more than 70% of the world's purchasing power is outside the United States, and more than 95% of the world's consumers are outside the United States. Most of the foreign companies or countries are improving their performance where we're staying basically in an underperforming side. You've heard a lot of talk about the trade deficits and things like that. One of the best ways to help with that is to help grow your exports. I know I may be preaching to the choir a little bit, since most of you are probably involved in the export process, having signed up for this webinar, but just wanted to throw that out there as a general setting for our conversation this morning. Just to put a little sharper point on it, you can see here, the United States only exports about 11% of our GDP. So it's safe to say we have a lot of room for growth. Less than 5% of the U.S.'s small to mid-sized exporters export, and of those, 58% only sell to one market. In our case, in Northern Ohio, a lot of that's with Canada. Those of you I saw in the chat early on, we had folks from Texas and California. I'm guessing a lot of your folks are one market could be Mexico. Some might be Europe, and some may be chasing sales, as Nate mentioned, coming to us saying, hey, I met so-and-so at a trade show and they're from Argentina. Now I need to learn how to export to Argentina. But you can see a lot of the folks around the world, it's a definitive strategy to export a lot of their products. Korea, 44%, Germany, 41% of their GDP, even Canada, our friends to the north, 32%. So we definitely have a lot of opportunity for growth. Our organization helped facilitate, I skipped one. So our mission is to grow U.S. exports and increase U.S. jobs. Same as Nate's, same as Michael's, essentially. How we're a little bit different being on the federal government level. We have worldwide recognition. It's not promoting the state of Ohio or state of California or state of Florida or whomever. It's bringing U.S. products and services to the world on an aggregate level. It sometimes helps to be able to have that U.S. Embassy calling on your behalf to try and make an introduction. I'll talk a little bit about it later, but we have a global network. And I think one of the things I'm most proud about my career here at the Commercial Service in the Commerce Department is we're very results driven. We are very much about how are we going to help you get to a new market, find a new customer, and sell more products. And we capture those stories as we go along. So we're very results oriented and very much focused on helping you grow your business. And that can be in the compliance side too, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. We've helped facilitate over $161 billion. We also do help foreign investors invest in the United States. So if someone wants to open a manufacturing company here in the US, we do help with inward investment as well. As I mentioned, and I haven't really gone into it yet, but I will in the next slide or two, we have offices across the United States. So there's a really good chance there's a commercial service office within probably less than 100 miles from where you are. Even if you're in Brazil or other parts around the world, we do have offices in the embassies and consulates. But we've assisted 93,000 clients across the country, and 81% of them are small and mid-sized businesses. So while we might help the Procters and Gambles of the world and the big companies, the majority of what we do are small businesses, from 5 or 10 employees, 100 employees, all the way up to some of the larger ones across the country. And those exports help facilitate and support 519,000, 500,000 American jobs across the country. So it's having a significant impact. And again, these are not just statistics that are, out of the ethereal. It's about, we collect this data from companies and ask them, hey, congratulations on your new deal with your new distributor in Thailand. Did you hire anybody? What were your sales increase? Those kind of things. We do collect that actual data. And that leads us to, for every dollar appropriated of your federal tax dollars to the commercial service, we've returned over $460 to the U.S. economy. And again, it's not a speculative number. It's an actual one that we've measured. So I don't know how many federal programs out there that you can say have that kind of return on investment, but another thing that I'm kind of proud of working for this agency. And again, exporting can be profitable for all size businesses. When I worked in the private sector, my company was less than 5 million in sales. Once I started going at it proactively, I was able to add over $1 million in sales to that small business, which is substantial, 20%, just by going after international sales and being proactive versus reactive. And that's where Nate's team and my team and Michael's team can help you grow. Again, average annual revenue increases, takes the seasonality out of your business, all these type of things. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. Is normally for the salespeople, and I'm imagining most of you are more on the compliance and the actual operation side of the business. But it does help your company across the board. Just here in the state of Ohio, for example, over 200,000 jobs are supported by exports. We have, Nate showed this stat too, just over 15,000 companies in Ohio that export. 88% of them are small. And believe it or not, Ohio is a top 10 exporting state in the United States. We do have some big companies in the aerospace region and others, but we have a lot of small businesses like my old company that export all over the place. And again, we do collect actual testimonials. I'm not going to bore you with all the information here, but we are going to share these slides. I don't remember if Michael mentioned that at the beginning, but these slides will be available for you. So I'm kind of skimming over a few of these in the beginning of the presentation. But if you're interested in any of this information, you'll have access to all this after the webinar is over. So let me go dive in a little bit more on what we do at the commercial service. So again, we have worldwide recognition, staff in the embassies and consulates around the world, across the United States, and we're very much results driven. We work with companies on export counseling. I'll talk a little bit more about each one of these as we go through it. Market intelligence, some of the stuff that Nate talked about as well. The last two are kind of our keynote or our top services. It's business matchmaking, connecting you with pre-screened potential partners, background checks, things like that. But the other thing that we bring to the table that a lot of other organizations can't is commercial diplomacy and advocacy. And I'll talk about that a little bit as well, on how we can advocate for your business on behalf of a government tender or other types of bids and things like that if your companies are involved. So let's dive in a little bit. So again, happy to connect you with your local office as we go through this program. I can't see the chat right now, so I apologize if I'm not answering your questions in the chat, but I will definitely, if you're interested in meeting your person in the commercial service in your local market. And again, this does relate to those of you that may be in international markets in Mexico and Canada, Brazil, or wherever. We have 80 plus offices across the United States. We have 127 offices in 80 countries around the world. And these offices are made up in the U.S. embassies and consulates with U.S. employees, both as officers and diplomats in those markets, but also we have locally employed staff. So our staff in South Africa are South Africans. Our staff in Morocco are Moroccans, Brazilians, Argentinians, Mexicans. So they work on behalf of U.S. businesses, but it's not like teaching me Portuguese to be successful in Brazil. We're hiring local Brazilians who know the market, know the culture, learn about your business, and find a way to connect you with the appropriate customer. Now, when you're talking about compliance, it's also they know the compliance rules and regulations in their country. So if you're unclear, what are the rules and regulations in Indonesia? We have people that are on the ground in Indonesia that will know what may have changed, what's happening at the local ports, that kind of thing. So we do have a large team that's what they do all day long, is help advocate for your business. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on export counseling. We do this a lot, but I also I refer a lot of this to Nate and his team, whether it's business development things, how to do a strategy, how do you do your financing and logistics and market entry. Nate and I work very closely in that respect. He's got a great team that can help you with a lot of that information, doing those research projects, doing compliance, helping you with HS codes, all those type of things. We can do it, but we have a much smaller staff these days, so we spend less time on that and more on the matchmaking side. We also do have an e-commerce innovation lab, so we are able to help you develop a website. If you are, I'm assuming most of you have websites, of course, but if you're interested in what do I need to do to close the gap, do I need a website with a .cn if I'm selling into China, or do I not? Do I need one? How do I manage with the GDPR regulations in Europe to calculate what data we can collect and what we can't? We have a whole group that specializes in search engine optimization, all that type of thing, to help make sure your website is competitive and operational in a foreign market to help you grow your sales in that market. We do have some out of the can market intelligence that I think is great. If you are not aware of our services, on our website, trade.gov, that I'm sure they're throwing in the chat for you, you can look up country commercial guides, which is how to do business in a particular country. And I think we're in 100-something countries because we also have State Department partner posts. So if you want to know business culture, if you want to know pricing structures, you want to know top markets, again, our local staff in those markets write those reports every year. So, I mean, they're not up to the minute, but they are up to date. And it even includes markets like Ukraine, with all the war that's going on in Ukraine, what's happening with the Iran war right now, all those type of things. Again, it might not be up to the minute, but the Ukraine war has been going on for a few years now. We are doing some business in Ukraine, so things like that happen. And that are available. They're a PDF. You can download them if you want to read them on the way on a plane, or you want to fall asleep at night and learn all you want to watch about doing business in Guatemala. We have all that available. We also do basic services like initial market check, just to find out your market potential. Something that may be of interest to you folks in the compliance space is also our international company profile, which is not just an internet search. It's a search where we have our local staff go investigate the company, talk to the trade references, the bank references, again, in their local language, visit the company, give you a full 9-10 page report on a potential partner that you have in an overseas market. What we really do best is matchmaking. We learn about what your company does, where you've been successful. Do you sell through distribution? Do you sell through an agent? Do you sell direct? Are you looking to get into, a Ministry of Defense? Are you looking to get into an education system? All those type of things. We have folks that, again, can learn about your company and what you do and set up either a meeting for you to go over, and our staff will accompany you on meetings, one-on-one meetings with pre-screened, pre-vetted, 3 to 5 companies that we think are your best opportunities to succeed in the market, and be able to facilitate. And again, for that service is our gold key service there at the bottom of this section, or this slide. We have about a 60 to 70% batting average on that one. So it's not 100% guaranteed, but it gives you a pretty good indication. And again, if I go back to my private sector days, going to trade shows, going over trying to make sales calls, doing what I can to try and grow my business, I would have taken a 60 to 70% batting average. You get to see their information, they see your information, and they agree to take the meeting before you get on the plane and go to a foreign market. We also do partner searches and things like that, where you can do virtual meetings like this webinar, where you can interview those companies and then maybe potentially travel to that market. I'm still a firm believer that people buy from people. So I recommend going to the market, but we have multiple different options going in that. We do trade events. My colleague here in Cleveland just got back from Vegas on Saturday for the big ConExpo Global Agriculture or the Design and Construction Show. We bring foreign buyers to those shows. We go to a variety of trade missions, overseas and domestically, again, leveraging our staff and our services around the country, around the world. I want to spend a couple of minutes at the end here on commercial diplomacy. We do have an advocacy center that their job is primarily to advocate for your business to get a global tender in a market, a bid. You know, if you're in the design and construction and they're building a big port in the Gulf region, for example, we have a team that will advocate for your business to select your company over, say, a Chinese company or a European company. We have a wide variety of services up to and including even the ambassador calling the selection official. Again, being that we are a federal agency, those of you in the compliance sector, if you have a trade barrier, you can report it to our offices and we can run it up the chain to see if we can advocate for you and your company to make sure foreign governments are agreeing to what they agree to and not just throwing up random trade barriers. Also in the compliance space here, I wanted to talk a little bit about trade dispute resolutions. If you have things that are stuck in customs, you have things where companies aren't paying you. We can't send the Marines in or anything crazy like that, but sometimes a call from the embassy will free something up at a port, or at least get you a straightforward answer, or a call to the customer's bank, or sometimes it's just an answer like, hey, we can't get US dollars. And they're telling you, and we can say, yeah, you're right. Right now in this certain market, we can't get US dollars. This is our local team here in Ohio. Again, we have folks around the country. We also have an office in Toledo, but you'll note this is Nate's shop here. I'm going to take the last 2 minutes or a minute and a half to make sure you do know about the U.S. Small Business Administration. They have federal loan guarantees just to support and promote exports, to help your company if you need to buy inventory, if you need to expand your building, because we found all kinds of great customers for you, and you now need 10,000 more square feet on your manufacturing floor. They have all kinds of programs like that. Ex-Im Bank is another federal agency that does buyer financing. So if you have a customer that wants to buy $1 million or $50,000 or $500,000 worth of your product, but they can't get financing in their country, they can sometimes get it through the Ex-Im Bank at U.S. government or U.S. rates. So, 7 or 8% loan instead of maybe in Brazil, it could be a 30% loan. They also have a great product called export credit insurance, which I leaned on in the private sector when I was in the private sector, to get insurance on your export receivables. So if you have receivables in Mexico or anywhere around the world, and you want to offer them open terms, or you want to offer them 50% down, 50% net 30, all kinds of different options, Ex-Im Bank has a great credit insurance program that allow you to be flexible. Most of us know we often negotiate based on price. This could allow you to keep your price and say, yeah, but I can give you 90 days to pay. So a lot of great federal resources. Use our office or your local commercial service office. We can all put you in touch with whether it's the SBDC people, the Ex-Im Bank, Star USA, or any of the other great resources in the local markets to make sure that you're not lone wolfing it unless you choose to. So with that, Michael, I'll turn it kind of back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Todd, for excellent coverage there. And I do want to call out the commercial services team in Ohio. Everyone I've worked with from that group over the last 10 plus years has been phenomenal to work with. Kind people. So, Todd, just in kind of listening to your session there, the thing that stuck out to me was commercial services is that hand in glove working together with various other groups and with the businesses themselves. And the words that stuck out were the export promotion agency. That is your role. There are enforcement teams in the government, but your job and your focus is on the export promotion. And that was a message I wanted to reinforce to everybody listening here is Todd, his teams, those folks, Nate and their teams, they're focused on helping you succeed.
Absolutely.
And I have a question for you, and this ties in with the question that's in the chat or in the Q&A portion of the webinar here. Audrey's mentioning that she previously worked with commercial services for small businesses in Wisconsin, and they connected her with WEDC for grants and exports, like Nate's team does here in Ohio. Todd, I was hoping you could talk about district export councils. I'm on the Northern Ohio District Export Council. Nate's involved with the District Export Council. What's the affiliation there with commercial services, and how does that all work?
Sure. Thanks, Michael. So two things there. One, yes, I'm happy to connect you with our team in Michigan. We have an office in Grand Rapids and one also in the Detroit area. We also have two decks in Michigan. So we have a Western Michigan and an Eastern Michigan deck, same as we have. And that's the abbreviation because, government, we have to use an acronym for everything possible. So the District Export Council, I'm going to refer to as a deck. We have a Northern and Southern Ohio deck. And again, these are across the country. We've got 70-ish decks across the country. So again, there's a good chance for you to participate if you're interested. But the District Export Council is kind of like the advisory board for the commercial service is one of their primary roles. I appreciate your service and volunteering. They're all volunteers. Nate's a volunteer as well to help provide information, not just to the commercial service to let us know what's happening on the ground. Michael can come to us and say, yeah, all these exporters are talking to me about issue ABC, and let's make sure the commerce officials know that this is happening, right? They can also let elected officials know that, hey, this is the feedback.
Uh-oh. We lost him. Whoopsies. Okay, well, hopefully he'll come back for the Q&A. I'm going to tee up the rest of the slides here. I do have a few things to mention before we move on toward the end of the webinar. As we've been talking about
here.
Oh, he's back.
Am I still there?
Yeah, you're back now.
Okay.
You got cut off. We'll jump back to you here in a second here, Todd. I'm going to wrap up the slides. I just want to mention, since we've been talking about exports for the last couple of months, there are several webinars for some of the more tactical sides of things. If you need some basic help and places to start with EEI filings, Commerce Control List, or licensing. We are putting together a customs broker license exam companion that will be available for free download on March 16th. So keep an eye out if you are interested in receiving that. Make sure you send us an email to train@startyoursday.org, and it'll be posted on our website here in about a week. There is a seminar coming up on Friday, March 27th in Northeast Ohio at the Olmsted Township Community Room. It is an all-day seminar from 8:30 to 4:30. We'll be covering a lot of topics having to do with navigating the 2026 global trade and logistics landscape. This is a partnership with MTA Lines and Star USA. And our keynote speaker will be Pete Mento, and we'll be talking quite a bit about tariffs, I'm sure. And then lastly, we are putting together another Elevate Summit for Women in International Trade in Columbus, Ohio for the fall of 2026. So if you want to get on the mailing list for that, make sure you send us a message. And on screen right now is the code for the live session of today's webinar. If you're watching this back on YouTube, it will be a different code. I want to mention that there are no O's in the code here. Those are only zeros. You will also need to include the dashes when you enter this code into the NCBFAA. Next month, our webinar will be focused on 1 year later, the year tariffs took over trade. And now let's do some questions. I'm going to leave this slide on the screen while we do some questions for just a couple minutes, so everybody has an opportunity to copy things down. Okay. One of the questions that we had submitted during the registration was questions about the BIS 50% rule. And I'll take a moment to kind of share my understanding of that 50% rule. And you guys, please feel free to jump in if you have additional things to add. The BIS 50% rule initially took effect in September of last year, but then was suspended in November. So it is to be reinstated in November of this year, if my dates are correct. And I should have done some research before this, but I haven't. The 50% rule basically states that no U.S. business may transact business with any other companies that are 50% or more owned by denied parties, people on the BIS lists, and there are several different lists out there. But if the ownership of the business is 50% or more owned by entities in the aggregate, then you are prohibited from dealing business with those entities as though they were directly named. That's my understanding of the 50% rule in a nutshell, and I'd be happy to go into more depth. But Todd or Nate, if you guys want to layer in, please feel free.
I think you did it well.
Okay. One of the things I want to talk to you guys about was, Todd, you mentioned it in your session, Nate, you mentioned it in yours, that partnership between the state and the federal. How do you guys work together, or do you work together? Are they separate beasts? And I guess I'll kick it over to Todd first.
Yeah, I mean, we're separate, but we're together. Like, we're all in it for the same game, same as Star USA, is to help companies grow their, export business. And, Nate and I have really worked hard the last several years to even find better ways to work together, whether it's joint programs like this. We are participants in the Global Target program that Nate mentioned earlier. It's a great export tech, kind of program. Same thing with the program out in the Toledo area, the Export Success Program. So we do a lot of joint programming. We do a lot of co-counseling. If they have a client they want to bring our way, we have a client we bring their way, that type of thing. So we look at it as, a seamless transition, because ultimately companies don't really care whether it's a state program or a federal program. They just want to know, hey, I have a question about HS codes, or I need to find a partner in Zimbabwe. We try and make it a no wrong door kind of thing.
Nate, do I add to that?
Sure. Yeah, I don't think there's no mandate though that we have to get along, and I know that in the past it wasn't always so harmonious. Of course, before Todd and I were part of it, but in other states too, there's some states have a better relationship with their federal partners, but more often than not, I hear that there is a great deal of overlap, particularly I think in states where there's very few people on both. I think about some of the New England states where there's just a handful of people, and they know that their futures are kind of like they're joined at the hip, so to speak. But it takes a bit of effort for us to remain in touch and to make sure that we are working collaboratively. Generally speaking, I think Todd, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but on our end of things, we are more incentivized to educate and work with companies, especially early stage companies, to provide a lot of hand holding, whereas Todd and his group have a lot more resources that are more geared towards transactional in-country services, things like that. And oftentimes if Todd meets a company that needs a little bit more work and education, they might kick them over to us, and then we'll talk with them for a year or several months or something. And then maybe we'll reintroduce them and say, okay, now it's time to go back commercial service, and you're ready to implement some of the actions.
Yeah, excellent. And one of the things I wanted to call out too, Todd, I see you're typing an answer, but the question in the chat is, are there charges to get help with screening and finding partners? So if you guys want to field that?
Yes and no. I'll let Nate go first. I know they have some free services with their partner search, and then we have some small cost recovery fees, but I'll let you go first, Nate.
Yeah, Ohio has chosen to designate some funds to make this a cost-free service. So we have contractors in 125 markets plus. And so, but what I will say is that Todd and his group, they have, I think, more specialists. What we tend to hire are more generalists. So there may be occasions where we will direct them and say, hey, listen, actually, you're better off maybe not using our state-based contractors. And by the way, Ohio shares our contractors with, there's a group entity that's shared across the Great Lakes states, especially. So odds are that if you're calling in from a Great Lakes states, like our contractor is also the one that is going to be working with you. But yeah, in our case, it's a cost-free service.
And we have some small fees. A background check could be as little as $300. Again, it's far less than you'd pay in the private sector, and it's a much more than just an internet search, that type of thing. For the individual, our gold key matchmaking service for a small business is around $950, and again, that incorporates having a bunch of industry specialists. So if you're in the auto industry, the aerospace industry, the cosmetics industry, whatever, we have somebody who has expertise in that market, and they will go out and interview a couple dozen companies and come back to you with a list of 3 to 5. And Congress has mandated that we recover those costs because it's a service specifically for your company and not for the greater good of U.S. businesses. So there's a little skin in the game for you. And, again, I think Nate's right. We have much more of a mandate on how do we help you sell more products or services. I say products a lot because I came from a manufacturing background, but even like if Mike wanted to, find a partner in Milan, we could help him find and market his services to companies to help him grow his business. So I know your business is probably going too crazy right now to start with, but if there is ever an opportunity, but we help architectural firms, we help all kinds of different firms as well. So
if you need somebody to go to Milan to scout out things, I also volunteer for that service.
Yeah, we'll set you up with a gold key to Milan.
We're a little bit past 11 o'clock here. So anybody that has to go, thank you so much for being here. I have a couple more questions, Todd and Nate, if you guys don't mind sticking around for 5 or 6 more minutes. Okay. If anybody else is welcome to post questions as well. Todd, in your slides, you mentioned how they were kind of geared towards salespeople. And that stuck with me because one of the things that we've struggled with on our webinars, we're mostly trade compliance people primarily. And one of the struggles that we have is how to get buy-in from other teams and agencies. So I guess the question to both of you is, what sort of resources do you have resources available to help encourage sales teams or executive teams to understand and approach exporting in a more holistic way? Nate, you can take that one first if you want.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not unusual for us to have a single point of contact, but it's really through the mentorship programs in particular where we ask multiple people from a company to come to some of our trainings so that it can be more holistic. There are so many occasions where we could feed something to a salesperson, but then they don't have a compliance person, or it's their bookkeeper that's is throwing a hissy fit because all of a sudden there's a whole different we're asking them to change, and so we try to preach that, and a lot of our relationship building we try to do. We like to visit companies if possible, and to try to get to know multiple people and to offer our counseling to various people, not just our point of contact. But it's not unusual that it starts with sales. I came from a sales background, so I know kind of what that struggle is like. It's easier said than done in some cases, but we make that attempt.
We do the same. I think it's one of those things. We often do a lot of analysis up front is whether the company is really export ready, since we are a results-based organization. And one of the things on our checklist is, do we have management buy-in? So if you have a salesperson that's super excited about exporting and but leadership says, yeah, no, we need more sales from Michigan, or we need more sales from California or whatever. We're certainly going to help, but we're going to help differently. So we often do, when we go visit a company in person or have a virtual call, we do like to invite management leadership to let them know that, hey, this is an all-in kind of thing, especially if you're going to spend money to fly to a foreign market, pay some money for one of our services. Because in the days of limited resources for both companies, but also our team, Nate's team. Our overseas staff only wants to focus on things that will be successful. And the companies only want to do things that can be successful. And one of the best ways to make sure your company is successful in any of these endeavors is make sure that that leadership is on board and that they're willing to invest in international and let, if Nate's the sales manager, okay, Nate, he wants to expand to Brazil. Okay, you're flying to Brazil a couple times a year, right? You're going to go down and meet the companies and your prospective distributors. And, we might have to, we're talking about compliance. We might have to do more on background checks or more on, the BIS lists or making sure our products meet the regulations of Brazil, all those type of things. And without leadership, it's really hard to sell that when you go across. Because, a lot of times compliance people are the ones that are always saying no, right? Like, no, you can't ship there. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. But most of the time that's right. But we need to make sure they know why they can't ship there and they're not adversarial between the sales and the compliance team.
Yeah, there's absolutely a challenge in getting everyone on the same page for the reasons why there are roadblocks or why one market is better than another, and finding those real opportunities and ignoring the ones that are not going to be lucrative. And
if leadership won't back compliance and they send something that they're not supposed to send, then
right.
Because they want the next deal. Like Nate said, when I was in the private sector, it's always about your next deal, right? No matter if you're the business owner, if you're in sales or whatever, you're always trying to grow your revenues.
Yep.
And it's a lot easier to say, well, it's going to the UAE, but I don't think it's going to Iran, right. or I don't think it's going to a denied party, or I don't think it's doing this. Let's just ship it. What the hell? It's the 29th of the month. Let's get it out the door.
Got to make those quotas.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Got to keep that light bill paid.
Yeah, I think leveraging kind of the resources that are available at multiple levels to help bridge the gap in understanding that people have, bring in that management buy-in, all those are essential tools. All right, I want to kind of wrap up here with just a few words from my side about why we're doing webinars like this. Late last year, we did a series of webinars just having a conversation with our audience and trying to understand where people were. And we learned from that the importance of having access to people that you can work with, networks and resources. And as you're seeing in our webinars, we're promoting communication as much as we can amongst one another. And we're also introducing people to fantastic resources that are there to actually work for you. People like Nate, people like Todd, that are in the mix, and genuinely their whole mission is to help you succeed in your business. And they get to kind of report those numbers up the stream, and it's a really good thing for everyone involved. More jobs, better economic outlook, all those things. So this is our version of keeping that promise that we started last year about trying to find ways to help connect networks and build networks. And I hope everybody in the audience is taking advantage of those opportunities because I think it is a really key way to expand your business, build success, work with other people that are invested in the same things. So I want to thank our two guests today for their wonderful discussions and the information they shared with us. All of the information that they posted will be sent out to everyone that registered. If you're watching this back on YouTube, go over to our website where there will be downloads for these links as well. So thank you, Todd and Nate. If you guys have any closing thoughts, feel free.
No, I appreciate the invitation to be here. It's been a delight, and we enjoy our partnership with Star USA.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. And I guess my last thought would be you don't have to go it alone. You can choose to, but you don't have to. Use Star USA, use the SBDC, use commercial service, all kinds of local resources to help you.
That's a good message. You don't have to go it alone. Thank you all for your time.